Welcome back to another one of Nathan Bell's commentary videos. Like, subscribe, share. Nathan's got all the data, all the info, and some really interesting perspectives on art, culture, philosophy, etc., and science. And in this case, Nate wants to talk about his experiences with the COVID-19 pandemic from an Australian perspective, I guess.
Yeah, well, I'm really glad all that's over. It was terrible. I absolutely hated it. Hated the lockdown because I have to be outside. I have to move around. I have to walk around, or I start to get very restless and cranky. So being in lockdown for 3 months, that 3 months that we were in lockdown, I just found it terrible. But that's not to say I didn't support it, because I do acknowledge it was an emergency. And I've always been a real doomsdayer, like I've talked before about how I predict a nuclear war. But I'm one of these guys who's very negative and thinks that some disaster is going to wipe out humanity. So when COVID came along, I was like, oh, here we go. Now it's going to be the apocalypse. I always thought it was going to be a nuclear war, but now it's a virus. I did recognise the severity of it because I've always taken threats to the human species very seriously. I was in the psych ward when COVID was announced. I'd been in there for about 2 weeks. I was in a bit of a paranoid state. So when COVID was announced, so I remember walking around in the lounge room area of the psych ward, and it came on the television, and that was the first I heard of it. I immediately started developing all these doomsday scenarios in my mind. Oh, this is the end of the world. Society is going to break down and collapse. But that didn't happen, and that's good. I was never... Look, I'm a pretty wacky guy, and I've got some pretty wacky ideas, and I'm a conspiracy theorist, but I was never a denier of the severity of COVID. Regarding the health system, I do view the health system as an authoritarian system, and what I don't like about the health system and health experts is that they deny people's right to present alternative narratives. I'm really big on alternative narratives. I'm into freedom of information, I'm into UFOs, I'm into all these alternative narratives. So what bothers me about health experts is they deny our right to present alternative narratives, and we do in this country have a right to oppose the leading narrative, and often the opposition narrative ends up winning out in the end, as we're going to see with UFOs, because I'm telling you, aliens are visiting the planet. So I do have a problem with the health system being authoritarian, and I am very big on choice, but I also have the intelligence to acknowledge when there's a catastrophic emergency. And I recognised that COVID was a catastrophic emergency, and I didn't deny that there was a virus. I acknowledged that COVID existed and that it was dangerous. Now, I'm double vaxxed. I got double vaxxed certainly because I wanted to continue working for reliability, and I needed to get double vaxxed to come into reliability. I just put off getting the third shot, and I never got it. But here's the thing, I've never had COVID. And in the many years it's been since the whole COVID thing, I've had cold and flu-like symptoms once. I had a mild sniffly nose about 6 months ago. And that's the only cold or flu-like symptoms I've had the whole time. And it's amazing because, all throughout COVID I've been out, in times when people were scared to go outdoors and they were scared to talk and everyone was wearing masks, I was out busking, and I was, and when you're a busker, you get a lot of money, and, money is really dirty and germs spread on money. So I'm getting all this change and this money, and people come up and they want to shake hands and blah, 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 and they want to touch you all through COVID. And I never got COVID. I don't know why. I must just have a good immune system, obviously, because I have never got COVID and I haven't had any flu or cold-like symptoms in that time. But I did find ultimately and I don't, I'm very liberal, and I don't like when the state comes in with the military in the street. It's all very police state, but there are emergencies, and in the nuclear war, I imagine we all go into martial law because that's what has to happen, because the world is breaking down and law and order is breaking down into chaos. So that's the role of the state in emergencies, to lock people down. And it's meant to protect people, right? So I never denied the severity of COVID. But what I really want to say about COVID is how it's traumatised me. Because pre-COVID, I've always acknowledged death and that the world is dangerous. And I've known for many years that there are dangerous things in life, and that you can die from diseases and viruses very easily. But since COVID, sometimes I get so worried that surfaces have germs on them, or that people are contagious with germs that will kill me. I can't even touch things. Sometimes I go around the house, I can't even touch things because I think everything's got germs and everything's going to kill me. And for a long time, I didn't want to touch anything because I thought everything had COVID on it. And I call this, my self-diagnosis is that I have post-COVID trauma, because I have, since COVID, become so concerned about my own mortality. It was a real smashing in the face for me. It reminded me and it showed me that life is just chance and random. All of a sudden we had this really dangerous virus taking over the planet and people were dying, and it just and all of a sudden, because I used to think I was a prophet and, like immortal and divine by God, so I had to just live to survive the nuclear war, and COVID shattered all that, and it was like, I wonder if I'm going to get this virus and die. And now everything is a threat. Now I just see everything, and that's that fear that they talk about, put the fear of death into everyone. Now I've got this, everything around me has germs. I don't want to touch people. I don't want to share things with people. I don't want to touch the floor or the ground. It's just become this incessant death anxiety, and I call it, and I think probably a lot of people felt that way during COVID. They might be starting to get over it. I still feel that way. I just feel like everything is a threat to my safety, and I'm always worried that everything's got lethal poisonous germs on it. So now I start washing my hands ridiculously far more, and scared of touching people. Don't want to touch people in the street. Don't want to be anywhere. Don't want to hug people. It absolutely. So it must have scared the shit out of me. I got through it in a pretty good psychological state while it was happening, but the lasting impacts of the fear of COVID have been very debilitating for me, because now I've got this constant fear that I'm going to die in the immediate future, and I'm scared that everything is going to kill me. So I call that post-COVID trauma, and I wonder how many people have post-COVID trauma. I really felt for people with like OCD. They must have been going mad. People who pre-COVID were already worried that everything was going to kill them. How did they handle it? But I certainly didn't like being stuck in the house. That was a nightmare. But I acknowledged that it had to happen because it was for our safety. And I would go out for my walks every day as we were allowed to. But the whole thing was just terrible. I just absolutely did not. It was the most terrible period, the most terrible 2 or 3 years. And another thing is, before COVID, as a busker, there were so many people out, and there were so many people partying, and people would come into the city, and people would dance and drink. And I think still some people aren't. I think people have got in this habit where they won't go out. And Newcastle's just not as busy, and it still hasn't come back. It's sort of, the life is starting to come back to the community, and people are starting to come back in from all over the Hunter to go out in Newcastle, and we're starting to see bigger crowds. But I think, I don't know why it's taking so long for life to come back to the community, but I'm telling you, people still aren't leaving their houses, and there still isn't the crowds and the foot traffic, and I can see how it's affected business. It affected business terribly, and I wonder, will there be a peak period where all of a sudden everyone will go, have we acknowledged that it's over yet? Is it over? And when will that peak period come where our collective society sort of goes, oh, it's over, we can go out again? Because I still think people are staying in their houses. But there's, some of my thoughts on the COVID experience. I'm amazed I never had COVID. I'm glad I've never had COVID. I feel pretty awesome about it, actually, because I must have some badass immune system, probably because I live like a homeless man. Homeless people tend to have good immune systems. So, drop a comment in the comment section about how the COVID experience was for you and what you thought about it, and let's have a discussion post-COVID.